Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, a new front in the Israel-Iran war, gas fields.
On March the 18th, a significant escalation. Israel bombed the South Pars gas field, the largest in the world, which is shared by Qatar and Iran. Around 85% of Iran's electricity comes from natural gas. Iran responded by attacking key energy infrastructure in the region.
As attacks expand in the civilian energy infrastructure, the impact could stretch well beyond the region, affecting electricity, supply chains, and prices worldwide. Why does targeting gas change the stakes of this war? I'm Kevin Hurton, and this is The Take. Hi. Before we continue with today's show, remember to leave us a comment telling us what you think about this episode and what stories you want to see us do next. How worried are you about the global impact of these attacks? Are you feeling it already? Let us know. And if you're listening on your podcast app, leave us a review telling us where you're listening from, and you might as well give us a 5-star rating while you're there. It really does help the show.
My name is Justin Dargin. I'm a senior fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs in Doha. Right now I'm speaking to you from the U.S. So hopefully when things die down, I'll be back in Qatar soon.
Okay, so Justin, welcome to The Take. So today we are going to try to explore some of the implications of these attacks we've seen on energy infrastructure in the Gulf. And things really came to a head on Wednesday when Iran and Qatar accused Israel of attacking a facility on the Iranian side of the South Pars.
Israel hit Iran's South Pars gas field, part of the world's biggest gas reserve, shared with Qatar. President Trump has warned Iran against targeting Qatar's Ras Laffan again. And in a social media post, he said the U.S. was not involved in the Israeli strike on South Pars.
Now, that's the world's largest known natural gas field, which Qatar and Iran both share. Hours after that, Qatar said that Ras Laffan industrial city had sustained extensive damage from missile attacks and blamed Iran.
Here in Qatar, a missile struck the Ras Laffan gas refinery, causing significant damage. The government says it could take up to 5 years to repair.
And it didn't stop there. The Iranian attacks continued on Friday, hitting a refinery in Kuwait.
Authorities in Kuwait have shut down parts of one of the country's largest oil refineries after drone strikes sparked a fire at Al Madi Port Refinery, which is a major export hub.
We've seen infrastructure now hit in Haifa, Israel, UAE, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, and I heard one commentator say, from a global energy supply perspective, we are deep into worst case scenario territory. So to start us off, do you agree? Is this a worst case scenario?
Absolutely. We can say that if it continues, then this would be everything that the pundits had been warning about for perhaps over a decade or longer. Instead of this being merely a logistical challenge and military areas being struck, military bases, and so on in the region. What we're seeing now is that this is a systematic targeting of energy infrastructure. So the main arteries that not only produce domestically for the Gulf countries, so the engines of their phenomenal economic growth over the last few decades. But what we're actually seeing now is this is an attack on the global energy sector right now. And what Iran has done, it has basically followed through on its pledges. So Iran has indicated, even quite early on, that if you attack our energy infrastructure, then the rest of the regional energy infrastructure is going to be attacked in kind. So we're going to retaliate. To be absolutely fair, though, Kevin, if you look at the war planning and military assessments that were undertaken, even going back to after the revolution. So let's say in the 1980s or so, this was something that was completely expected. It was expected during war game scenarios and also during assessments of different scenario planning that Iran would, first of all, obstruct try to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, and then also lash out, if it were faced with an existential crisis, lash out at the energy infrastructure across the region to impose as high a cost as possible.
It sounds like the reason why so many U.S. presidents declined to do this.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, they knew it was going to happen. Trump, for some reason, touched the stove.
Yeah.
There are a ton of angles we could explore, but why don't we start with natural gas and the attacks on Ras Laffan in Qatar? This is a really, really big deal because it's the world's largest LNG facility. I've been up there. It's massive. Can you tell us a little bit about how the facility works and the extent of the damage and maybe why getting it back to full strength is such a huge ask?
Right. So Ras Laffan is actually the largest concentrated LNG facility in the world. Now, LNG basically is how you take natural gas, which previous to the development of liquefied natural gas was was a type of commodity that was not fungible. So that means that you wouldn't be able to transport it easily to different areas in the world. So basically what I would like the way for you to think about this is that you have a buyer and then you also have a supplier. And then typically what would happen before the development of LNG, you would have a pipeline that connects them. So more or less, they would be in a marriage for a very long time. I mean, plus 30 years. I mean, this is, of course, why you see some of the problems that were occurring in the EU as they tried to diversify away from Russian natural gas because they were locked in a type of pipeline relationship. So oil was always, let's say, the hydrocarbon that was easily shipped across the world. But with natural gas, you had the development of LNG. So that allowed natural gas to be transportable, to be fungible, where you could transport it anywhere in the world. So Ras Laffan is the economic artery of Qatar's economic growth. You have not just LNG production there, but you also have what is known as gas to liquids. You also have petrochemical facilities and so on and so forth. I mean, so it's absolutely essential for not just for Qatar, but for the global economy. So when you hit Ras Laffan, you are taking offline essentially nearly 20% of global LNG supply. I mean, that's why it's just so important. I mean, the preliminary reports that we have now are that about 17% or so of the facilities have been severely damaged. From what we hear from Qatar Energy, potentially it could take about 3 to 5 years to restore it to full capacity. And why does it take so long? Because much of the equipment for the production of LNG or processing natural gas into LNG, that requires it's specialized equipment, custom made. And then in addition to that, Qatar is not going to send workers there until it is absolutely assured that the safety situation has been stabilized. I mean, so we're not just looking at how long it's going to take from today. We're looking at when Qatar Energy feels that the situation will be stabilized security-wise to be able to send its workers there and restart operations fully.
Yeah. Well, where does the gas from Qatar go when it leaves Qatar, and what is it used for?
Yeah, so from Qatar, mostly the natural gas, which is processed into LNG, it mostly goes to Asia. So you see many shipments to South Korea. You see shipments to Taiwan, for instance. A large amount of the LNG that is exported from Qatar goes to India. So we're looking in terms of the Asian market. That's where Qatar really dominates, and that's why it's so important. But Qatar has been increasingly important in terms of the EU as well, because since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and of course the EU has been diversifying away from Russian natural gas, it has turned to LNG. And of course, Qatar is a major component of that. So Qatar has been making inroads in supplying LNG to the European market.
So what does that mean for places in Asia? I mean, will they be able to pick that up from other sources?
Yeah, well, what you're going to see is much more competition. For the LNG, that will have to pick up the slack supply-wise. So you would have to look at the usual suspects, for instance, the U.S., Australia, and then there are which are the first and second largest LNG suppliers, respectively, and then also there are emergent natural gas players that are in Africa and then also other countries. So taking Qatar off, you really won't be able to have another LNG supplier, another natural gas supplier, be able to rapidly increase production that would offset that. It's simply not possible in the short to mid-term. We're talking about even 5 to 10 years or so. I mean, so it takes a lot of time. And the U.S. is producing full out. I mean, so it's basically at capacity. Australia as well. So it's going to take some time in order to be able to meet that or to offset that.
These contracts happen years in advance. It's not like you can just go to the natural gas store and pick some up. I mean, if there's a finite supply, yeah.
Right, absolutely. You're going to start to see a type of triage in terms of the bidding process for the natural gas that is out there. So the countries such as South Korea, such as Japan, and so on, even though they depend on LNG to a large degree, economically, they are much better situated than if you look at a country like India, or let's say Thailand, for instance, or even Pakistan. So what you're going to start to see is what is known as demand destruction. So the countries that are not able to afford to buy LNG at elevated prices, you're going to start to see them pushed out of the market. And then that's when you start to see what is known as demand destruction, where demand starts to go down and then prices will begin to stabilize themselves.
Okay, so for the average person who's sitting in like the US or Canada, for whom this might all feel really far away, how would you explain the significance of what's going on?
Yeah, well, there are several ways that the average consumer is going to be impacted. Now, the oil sector, natural gas sector, these are somewhat different creatures. Oil, of course, everyone knows they will feel the pain and they see it. It's quite immediate, quite visceral when they go to the petrol station, the gasoline station, in order to fill up their tanks. I mean, so the next several days later, after any type of incident in the Gulf region, then of course they will see the prices increase. So that's the first impact. Secondly, because oil, and i.e. Gasoline, is used to transport much of the daily goods that we consume, you're going to start to see that percolate. Grocery stores, prices will increase. Anything that is basically transported, that price increases are going to be passed on through the consumers. Although there is a bit of lag, of course, but consumers will start to see that. And then there's also another aspect as well. Natural gas and oil, they tend to be the feedstock for petrochemicals, fertilizers, and other goods as well. So I think roughly about 6,000 daily products are made out of natural gas and oil feedstock. So, of course, plastics and all of these, you will start to see a secondary price increase. Of course, that's going to hit the consumer. With natural gas is primarily used for power generation as well. So then you will power generation and heating. So you will start to see increases, of course, pass through to the end consumer as well. I mean, so you will see increases in electricity bills, heating bills, so on and so forth. So basically, it's a double whammy, Kevin, for the average consumer in the West.
Wow. I mean, so the average person in North America is going to feel this, but perhaps the worst impact will be in smaller countries with weaker economies in the global South, right?
Absolutely. That's where you're going to start to see rationing. That's when you're going to start to see people doing without. I mean, so it basically what you could say is that you would be able to see the very first impact happen in the global South, that would happen in Africa, that would happen in Asia, Southeast Asia, and so on, where you start to see what I called demand destruction before. So they would go without, and then let's say in higher income countries, that's when you will begin to see people cutting back. If they're in the U.S., they might not take that driving trip. They might drive less. So you start to see modifications, behavioral modifications that happen because of these price increases.
The downstream effects of this are going to be so great. Do you think that people are really engaging with what's coming?
I would say no. I mean, even though if you look at the U.S. and of course even Europe, this has been perhaps the only war since World War II where the vast majority of Americans did not support it. But they're not really engaged. They don't really understand what's happening. It seems that many are not so interested to go deeper into what is occurring. But they're starting to see the ramifications, though, at the gasoline pump when they go there. So
just barely. But the war is coming to their doorstep. They just don't realize it yet. So, Justin, there's a lot of discussion around the Ras Laffan attack for obvious reasons, huge global implications. But I would like to ask you about the Israeli strike on the South Pars facility, because it might have serious problems, cause serious problems for Iranian civilians. In Iran, 80% of its electricity comes from natural gas. So if they can't make this natural gas themselves, they will really struggle to buy it on the open market, unlike other countries. How is the attack on the South Pars going to be felt inside Iran, especially come winter?
Yeah, well, it's going to have an enormous impact. Now, the majority of as you indicate, the majority of natural gas produced by the South Pars field is consumed domestically for cooking, for electricity generation, and also for the petrochemical sector in Iran. So it really forms the bedrock of Iran's industrial base. And indeed, that was one of the reasons why it was attacked, because what it increasingly appears like is that from the Israeli perspective, they want to absolutely decimate Iran's manufacturing and industrial base to prevent it from ever becoming a threat again in the future. So that was the reason why fundamentally South Pars was attacked. And also just to cut off all avenues of potential revenue for the Iranian government, and then also to put pressure on the government in the sense that if the government is not able to meet the fundamental needs of its society, then the idea is, of course, many of the citizens will rise up against the government. And you see that strategy also in Cuba as well. That's why you see a type of oil embargo right now on Cuba. So that's one of the reasons why, or actually several reasons why South Pars was targeted. It could be a humanitarian crisis come winter, simply because Iran, particularly in its mountainous regions, can get actually very cold, and residents in these areas will simply not have enough heating, will not have enough electricity, will not even be able to have the fuel that is necessary to cook. So this is going to be a significant problem if South Pars is not able to be brought back online, let's say by winter.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be difficult for the Qataris to get theirs back online, they're going to have even less resources.
Absolutely.
So up until now, the Gulf countries have been staying out of the fray, but Iran has, continued to target them. Is there a tipping point where you could see Saudi or UAE or others decide that they simply have to enter this as a military power?
So what we've seen with the Gulf countries thus far is defensive restraint, defensive hardening. For instance, missile intercepts are really focused on trying to mitigate any threats to their economic engines, i.e. the oil and gas sector. In terms of the tipping point, red lines have been crossed. Lines are extremely blurry now. I mean, so it's difficult to see where there could be just a line that is absolutely unacceptable for the Gulf countries, where they will start to act either in concert with the U.S. and Israel, or let's say unilaterally to strike Iran. But I would say mass casualty events, that would be a big one. So let's say if Iran either purposefully or unintentionally attacked population centers, and then on TV you see dead Saudis, Saudi citizens, Emiratis, whatever Gulf country, then you will start to, there would be a groundswell of support for, and also anger, where the governments would even have to act in order to assert their sovereignty and also their deterrence ability. And then sustained and successful attacks against the energy infrastructure in the region. I mean, so we saw Ras Laffan was hit. We saw also Fujairah was hit. We also see key logistical points, of course, in Saudi Arabia for the energy sector have been targeted. So if you continue to see these strikes, and remember, Kevin, it only takes one or two that need to get through. Right. I mean, so the defensive missile system is not perfect, of course, and also interceptors are running low. So it only takes one or two to get through. If you begin to start to see that happen in earnest, then I would say that you would have the Gulf countries begin to assert themselves offensively against Iran. Although they do have many incentives not to, though, because once the U.S. leaves, and eventually it must, they're going to be stuck with Iran.
Justin, thank you for coming on The Take today.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.